I'm 43. No children. Normal appearance. I got the apartment from my parents. I live alone, with the resource of work interruptions. Good education. There is a prestigious experience, and it allows me to periodically settle on decent positions, or to conclude a profitable partnership and earn a favorite business not bad on the market money. But I regularly get tired after a year or 2 or 3 of intensive workloads. I do not know how to collect myself or reorganize my activities. In periods of failure, I can long interrupt myself with casual earnings, very modest. Resource economy is not developed. For the past years have not accumulated anything but memories of travel and a small car. Just recently separated from the guy with whom we lived for 2 years. On his initiative, the man is 46 years old and has no children. He runs his own company, a successful small business. He has 2 apartments. He is involved in many extreme sports, and he's successful there too. That's where we met. I wanted to try it. He introduced me to the subject of extreme sports, dispelled some naive illusions about how much money is needed for such hobbies. Paul became my guide to these worlds. Extreme sports became possible for me only thanks to him. He lent me his equipment, bought me costumes. He worked with me as an instructor, spent his time at resorts, and got me expensive instructors when he couldn't help me himself. A few months into the relationship, he called me on an expensive, very cool dream trip. I paid very little there, and mostly when he wasn't around. It was the same for other trips afterward, of which there were many more. This trip was a gift I never even dreamed of. I was very happy. He seemed to say he was also very happy for me and for how similar we are, how much we find in common. And in general, that everything was working out so well. We didn't sleep much. We rode a lot. We walked even at night. It was great, but I was also very tired physically. I'm not used to such intensive training. I tried very hard without sour tears, cried right at the training, and worked hard again. The adrenaline was enough for everything. Paul often reminisced afterwards about how good it felt. I really admired his strength, hard work, perseverance. I was amazed how in the most difficult situations, for which he fought to the end, when it became clear that nothing could be done, he sighed for a minute and then went to do something useful. He didn't flinch, didn't get discouraged, worked even when he was sick. He did not feel sorry for himself, but this admiration for the lack of pity then began to fade because of recent events. After this resort, we started to live together at his place. Actually, he called me to move in when his new apartment was ready. But the renovation was delayed, and it turned out that I moved into his old apartment temporarily. I asked him to live with me, but he was not satisfied. I was very grateful to him and happy to move in. I tried to take over the household as much as I could. Cooking, laundry, cleaning. At the beginning of a few months, he was happy, said how much more time he has for work, and generally feels good about caring. For two, it seems to be not difficult, but with the unaccustomed and different ideas of what should be. Perfectly did not work out. Over time, he became dissatisfied with what I cook. We gained extra pounds. He didn't like my stuff lying around somewhere visible. I asked him to give me more shelves in his apartment, but he agreed, but it looked like he was under pressure. Then he started asking me to take some things back to his apartment, arguing that you don't use them now. I had only one large order at work during this time and several small ones. The specifics are such that one order can feed several of my months, if without glamour. It turned out that I frankly hammered, considering the convenience of living together and the priority. Some clients broke down. Some were invested in the wrong marketing strategy and lost both money and time. He didn't seem to insist at the beginning of the relationship that I had to work a regular job. He said that his position is that if a woman has a household and children, he is ready to provide for them. But I did not plan to hang on his neck. I found how to pay from their own if I went to the store for groceries or he sent me to buy something or gifts, small household things. But when we were together, he paid. He even tried to help me promote my business, but something didn't work out. Something remained at the level of promises. I was always very grateful, even when I did not agree with the advice, was grateful for the desire to help. Probably not enough. At one point, he asked me to help in his business. You're not doing anything anyway. It was scary to learn a related activity, but I was happy to help and it started to turn out well. But the workload was not enough, and he offered to pay me pennies, and even those he forgot for half a year. I tried very hard not to get money out of him myself. He already had the communal expenses. He bought more than half of the groceries, and a few times just gifts. And all the trips of his choice, and there were a lot of them, he took me with him. I got out of it. Gift money, credit cards, stash, if something was not enough brought from my apartment. But by and large, I was still on his payroll. But in the last 6 months, the situation worsened. He almost regularly had to give me money for my requests related to children. That is, trying to get pregnant. A few months after we moved in together, he started talking about a baby himself. I'd like to have kids. Do you even want kids? And I did. But the situation is not optimistic, and I've consulted with doctors before, and I may have to undergo IVF. And what about children in general? He has a better chance with a younger candidate. Paul replied that he is already with me. He chose me, and let's try both this way and naturally. And if anything, let's see what the options are. And that's his investment. The offer to have a baby. And an investment and big steps towards it. I was inspired by this attitude and I, without bringing up the wedding or any other arrangements, flew to the doctors to draw up the documents. A lot of his money went not only for traveling, but also for the repair of the new apartment, which was delayed. In the beginning, he also invited me to make decisions and help with the renovation. I was happy to take on some of the workload. He suggested something to improve the design, to choose materials together, to help with the hiring and supervision of workers. But over time it became clear that all my proposals unnecessary under various plausible pretexts. And even if I tried to openly disagree, he still did it his way, brought and showed the finished result and said, "But is it really better this way?" Over time I began to realize this is really his real estate. Everything is to his taste, but will there be room for me? But in parallel, I was doing IVF, and it pushed most things out of my head as an urgent priority. The first attempt was unsuccessful. Paul wasn't involved except for taking 2 tests at a nearby house and calling me a cab afterwards. And I went to the doctor's almost like going to work every other day or 2. The doctors there really do want to help you, but within a system they themselves are subject to. 6 months for a first attempt. No success. And the next day, my mom goes into the emergency room. I'm totally there. I'm sleeping under doors when the situation stabilizes a little bit. I live with my family to help. I'm asking Paul to come and live with me, to work from there, to support me, because the conditions allow it. He agreed in words, then under a plausible working pretext went to his place. I understood. He is more accustomed to work from himself, and he did not return until the weekend. And all the weekends of the summer we had planned trips in advance. I didn't want to screw him up, so I wouldn't have to cancel trips with him. I really love it all. I wanted to get away from it all, but I overestimated my strength so much that in the middle of some headlining festival I was throwing up in the bushes from exhaustion instead of enjoying myself. We started fighting regularly, either on the road, because I was taking too long to pack and not keeping to the agreed time, or on other occasions. More and more I was becoming a burden rather than a fun companion. By the fall, I brought up the conversation that maybe we shouldn't have kids. He's not that interested in participating. I'm not sure I'd be able to pull it off on my own if we broke up. He replied that this is my job, that he is doing his, and I should do my womanly job. I have to do it myself, and that I should keep trying. So I kept trying. I had to go to clinics far away from where he lived. By New Year's Eve, I had an emergency surgery just in case to check. I called, cried a lot, asked him to come with me to listen to what the doctors were suggesting, to take part in the decisions. But he had a job. But he gave me money for the operation. He didn't come to the hospital. He was far away. And I was sick and came to my senses every time in my own apartment. He didn't call a cab either. He motivated it by the fact that every time before the doctors there was some insignificant reason for a quarrel. Suitcases not dismantled, things on the shelf in a prominent place through. I offended him with that, so it's strange to expect support after a scolding. I clung to the idea that this is my job and that if I want a child, I need to cope with it myself as a job, and if I can after anesthesia to sit behind the wheel and drive home, then I could not, would not sit. I felt sorry for myself, of course, but I thought that the child is my responsibility first of all, and if he wants to help me in something, It's help, not an obligation. He gave me money for medicine when mine ran out. Then on New Year holidays, all the doctors closed. We went on vacation again. From his side, there was talk that everything is already bad, that his history with his ex is repeating, but let's still go on vacation and try to establish relations. I tried to irritate him less, more to give him a vacation without me, to make his plans as he wanted. But he still called me to come with him, and got mad at my lack of focus. There were a lot of good things about this trip too, just like the rest of our life together. He brought surprise goodies. We learned a new hobby together. He supported my dance classes. I learned from him all the time how he understands modern technology and doesn't waste a minute, even entertaining scientific content. Every day he ran 10 kilometers before work. And it was all so admirable. I didn't know there were such lively people. But in general, we continued to argue, after he began to reproach me that I do not work, because not all day I'm not on the doctors, and in general I need to somehow noticed if I sit at home without work. When I asked him how he saw the time of a possible maternity leave, Paul answered that he offered to support only if there was a child, and there was not. By the time I broke through to schedule my second echo appointment, I was very sick with the flu. I caught it when I was at my family's house and stayed sick in my apartment again, and in order not to infect him, and to get some rest, I was constantly reproached by doctors that I was under stress, and the chances of successful conception were decreasing. He was due to leave soon for a pre-planned training vacation. We had already discussed that I would not go there with him, even though it was a resort, so as not to disturb him. But the problem was that the date of intended conception could coincide with the day he had to leave. I was very upset, crying. The day before signing the papers, when he had to report to the hospital for sure, he had a conference with colleagues, which turned into a corporate party. He called me a lot at 3 in the morning, drunk, and demanded to sort things out. I asked him to think and decide whether he would come to the hospital in the morning, and if not, then everything can still be rolled back. I will not start injecting hormones. IVF could be canceled. He still came, in a terrible state, long stood at the door of the hospital. I decided that I will endure everything he says and will be silent. But in the end he said, "Let's go." There ran, crumpled, and by some miracle I was still taken in the protocol. Then he went on his business, I went on my own. In the evening, he himself offered me to stay at my place alone, and then so it went on, while I was injecting hormones. Periodically called, I asked to come, at least to spend the night with me. He again and me did not like that I am not ready to spend 4 hours on the road to spend the night with him, if I want it so much. I was horny inside myself, that I had to bring the eco to the end, that I should not be nervous and involved in the showdown, so as not to risk that it would not work out again. On these days was my birthday. I did not risk talking on the phone, he wrote, offered me as a gift to pay for a therapist. The next day, Paul called to tell me that he was splitting up with me, that he didn't want a child with me on any terms, that I offended him by not wanting to take him drunk at 3 in the morning in front of the doctor, that I went on my own business and did not want to call him with me. Can you imagine what it's like to hear that on the phone? And I'm already on the IVF protocol. Paul asked me what we were gonna do. I told him I was driving. I could come get my stuff from his apartment. He was glad I'd pick it up so quickly today. By the time I got there, he had already partially packed my stuff. I did my best to quickly and silently gather the rest and put it in the car, and drove off. The fetus didn't take root, and I couldn't carry the baby. The doctor said it was my last chance. And later, I accidentally saw on someone else's Instagram that he went on a trip with a girl from our mutual company. I suspected he liked her. She's braver than me in sports, younger. I did the best I could in that relationship. I only broke down because I was so tired. I told myself I wasn't going anywhere. When I chose him, it seemed to me that this man is reliable, not like any of those with whom I was worth a relationship. I used to turn them down. Now I think that at 43 it no longer makes sense for me to try to build a relationship with a man and invest in this resource. Since I was a student, I've nurtured the idea of adopting a child. I thought it was the only way to help children. But in my ideal plan in my head for life was also my own children and adopted children and a full family. But no man I met was too close to the idea of adoption. I went to foster parent school before I met Paul. I know the necessary documents. By the way, that's what Paul bought me into when he agreed that it was an option to consider, but then I think it's later, for me personally. I see the main task now is to get a permanent job. It did not work out with the business, as I planned, where I can at least independently regulate the load in parallel with the child. And there is no time for such a thing. Please, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are many more interesting stories ahead. Thank you.